Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. I'm also grateful that I am here because it has been a very tumultuous and un ungrounded amount of time, certainly in the last month or 6 weeks, but also just this whole year of the dragon has been very challenging, especially to those who are very oriented toward the Draco energy. You have dragon bloodline energy, whatever the case may be. It's been a very tumultuous year so far. And what we're going to talk about today is the new moon in Libra, specifically for the forecast for the Libra folks, Libra rising, Libra sun, Libra moon. If you have any strong Libra in your chart, in your progressed chart, your draconic chart, whatever the case may be, this forecast is going to focus primarily on the astrological themes from our new moon, which is today in Libra, which also happens to be an annular solar eclipse. As you can see on the screen in front of you, I do have the pathway presented for those who are very visual. But there are a couple of things that I want to address in terms of Hurricane Helene, an astrological note, if you will, about the recent experience of Hurricane Helene. I have a couple PSAs to go over, of course, because I have been off the radar, so to speak, for a number of weeks and really months, just and not very consistent since the beginning of the year of the dragon, because it's just been very challenging in my personal life. So I'm grateful to be back into this space. I want to get back into more consistent uploads and yeah, so first and foremost, welcome back, everyone, especially if you are a longtime regular subscriber, a consistent viewer, especially those who are supporting Catalyst Energies, either by booking readings, Reiki sessions, and those who are making monetary contributions through Subscribestar on a monthly basis. Thank you for being here. You are the folks that have been really been the consistent force in my own personal life as I've been trying to navigate all kinds of tragedy and challenging situations. So I just want to take a moment for a special shout out to those folks. And I'll talk about the benefits that are involved with monthly subscription as we go through this, because I want to share first and foremost, before we get into the minutia here of the astrology, I want to just draw your attention, if you're not already aware, that I've already put up content on the eclipse season in general. There is a public video that's on this channel already. There is a much more in-depth 6-month forecast that is available either through purchase on my website as a digital download, or it is included in the benefits of monthly subscription to the Starseed Fellowship and the Catalyst Classroom. All of that stuff is linked in the description box below if you want to be informed and you have an interest. But if you are looking for that type of material, you can always go back and find the video if you haven't watched it. Maybe you need to review. And like I said, the 6-month forecast ahead for eclipse season and a much more in-depth read of the eclipse season in general is available for purchase or as a benefit to monthly subscription. So I just want to put that out there because we are going to focus primarily on the new moon in Libra forecast for the Libra rising and sun and moon folks. Now, of course, being that we do have an annular solar eclipse in the sign of Libra, we're going to have a full moon in Aries coming up 2 weeks from now. The Libra people in particular certainly are going to be impacted very strongly by not only this lunar cycle, but the impact of the eclipse. And that's something that I talk about in depth in those other reports and those forecasts, is what are eclipses astrologically? What do they mean? How do we read them? So that's something that you can review and go over. So especially if you are a Libra person, because the last 18 months with the nodes of the moon in Aries and Libra have been affecting you as a Libra person pretty strongly when it comes to the trajectory of the soul on our evolutionary journey. And so the lunar phases represent the individual process of growth and relationship through the relationship of the sun and the moon. It represents the inner duality that we all live with and how we grow and evolve as a result of that relationship. Well, when we talk about eclipses, they have this undercurrent of much deeper soul-oriented growth and evolution. And so normally these lunar cycles, these new moons and full moons, are something that the cycle is truly a lunar cycle over the course of the moon's orbit around our planet. But when the eclipses happen, there is a much deeper gestation period, something that is put in kind of like a time capsule, is the way that I envision it and experience it. That doesn't really resolve itself until the next eclipse cycle starts to come around, and there's usually some sort of overlap from the last eclipse cycle into the next one. Now, this eclipse represents the last eclipse in the axis of Aries and Libra with the nodes of the moon. So Libra, this is really one of the last chances at a soul level that you have to make the most of this energy, because by the time we come into the spring, even though the new and full moons will still be on the Aries and Libra axis, the nodes of the moon are going to be shifting into new signs, as they do every 18 months. They shift into a new set of signs, which will be Pisces and Virgo. And our full moon that we had 2 weeks ago, the full moon itself was the sun and moon were in that axis of Pisces and Virgo. And so we got a little bit of a taste of what that next 18 months at a soul level, right? The journey of the soul, the north node being where we're headed, the south node being where we've been. And Libra people, where we've been is where Libra has been. It's been the south node. It's the tail of the dragon. It's the momentum that pushes us forward. It's something that we've mastered. So Libra folks, keep in mind as I go through this, the assets of who you are, right? Which is ultimately people who are fair, people who are invested in balance and symmetry in relationship, people who are interested in finding that balance and will adjust themselves accordingly. Especially Moon and Libra people will emotionally adjust themselves accordingly in order to achieve a form of balance in a relationship. This is an asset, and this is something that at a soul level we've all learned to master. But remember, this is something that we're coming out of. And for the Libra rising people in particular, but even Sun and Moon, of course, it's not until you're in relationship that your pure creative potential as an individual is really released, right? The seed point of a new creative cycle is released in relationship. And so it's this aspect of who you are that you've mastered and that you're really, really familiar with, but you have to keep in mind that this is something that we're all coming out of and is propelling us forward. And that can be really difficult when you rely, especially in terms of how you feel, how you express yourself, and certainly the person you project into the world is someone who is very balanced, and somebody who wants to achieve balance is very, in a lot of cases, very pragmatic mentally and consciously, and will adjust themselves accordingly. And it's not to say that those things are negative or bad in this situation. It is to remind you that a South Node eclipse is propelling us out of a place that it's time to leave behind. And in 9 years, when the nodes of the moon are in a complete opposite position, that will be your time, Libra. But you got some time here to work with, and it's in the realm of relationship that seed point, that creative potential, that desire to be a subjective personality in the world, it's in relationship where that really comes out. So like I said, you can get all of the eclipse forecasting and reports. It's already available, and everything you need is in the description box below. And certainly you just have to scroll through this channel that you're on in order to find the public video if you haven't already watched it. So the path of totality, it's not total because it's annular. So the annular solar eclipse is the ring of fire. So it's not a full total eclipse, but it is mostly obscured and shadowed. But as you can see here, the pathway where you get to see the full on Ring of Fire is going to be mostly out in the Pacific Ocean, and then it's going to be moving through southern South America, so Argentina and Chile. And so a very small population of folks will be able to actually witness the fullness of this solar eclipse. But we're still all impacted by it on this planet. So now, a couple notes about Hurricane Helene, and I actually want to bring up the chart to point this out. Now, one of the primary benefits of membership through Subscribestar, and by the way, just to put it out there in case you don't already know, is that the first 30 days of your subscription to the Starseed Fellowship, which is Tier 2, is totally free. So if you want to try it out and sign up and see if it's worth your $5 a month, you can do that without any obligation at this point, and you get access to weekly astrology and energy updates, which I'm going to talk about right now, and a private Telegram channel, a monthly group chat and group call that we all participate in. It's really loose form, and discounts on services, and then of course the special reports. So for instance, they had the eclipse, and then in December I'll have a special solstice report, and oftentimes I will open up the readings, that the forecasts I do for those time periods will be opened up first to subscribers, and because I only have a certain amount of slots that I will make available for those time sensitive types of readings. Anyway, one of the things that I want to bring up here, now that we've talked about in those weeklies, and it's come out a number of times here, is oh my, hold on here. This is not what I anticipated things would look like. I really like this particular, I've really held out. I'm going to be honest. I've really held out on buying the software. It's just not on my priority list, even though I am a professional astrologer. So I use a lot of online stuff, and this particular website is really great because you can move through things in real time, as you can see. But they started putting banner ads on both sides, and it's very distracting. And I had tried to fix it, and now it is back to where it was. Anyway, so I'm going to try to minimize the distraction. There we go. That's pretty good. So we are looking at the chart for the eclipse, especially for, as you can see, the Libra rising folks, and we're going to get into all of that and look at the main astrological themes for the next 2 weeks for the Libra rising sun and moon folks for this eclipse. But what I'd like to point out here is something that was actually much more relevant and has come up in a number in the weeklies, right? And part of the weekly is not just astrology, but I do a card reading too, and wrap that all together into one type of forecast, an energy forecast. And one of the things we talked about, which is starting to dissipate as of today, but has been very strong, is this Mars-Saturn trine. So Mars had been conjunct the sign, been in the sign of Cancer. It had been conjunct the star Sirius, right? So big starseed overtones to where Mars in Cancer is. Saturn has been retrograde now for months in Pisces. So one of the things I did talk about, number one, that this was a very significant starseed type of activation with Saturn and Mars. Now, just in general, having these two in a trine together had really set the tone for really buckling down and getting something done, or at least starting something, having the determination, having the stamina. Now, a couple things to point out here. Number one, that Saturn is retrograde, and it has been brutal. Like everybody that is even remotely into astrology, I think at this point, especially in the sign of Pisces, the retrograde of Saturn has been really just unyielding and has been pretty difficult. It has made what normally is restriction and a sense of responsibility so internally heavy that it feels almost impossible to get out of, okay? Now, that also can mean that those experiences of restriction and responsibility and form and structure that Saturn represents, even at a spiritual level, because we're talking about Pisces here, or in the collective unconscious, if you want to think about it that way, it's much more of an internalized process, you know, and when Saturn does station direct, those types of experiences are going to be much more projected outwards. They'll be experienced more in the external. So they have been very internalized. Now, when I did the read originally for Mars trine Saturn and the Sirian starseed nature, which is very shamanic, it's very protective of your tight-knit home and family, right? A custodian, a guardian. This was before the storm came and just ravaged Florida and all the way up the Appalachian chain up to probably, it sounds like, even West Virginia. Now, where I'm at in north central PA, I mean, you would have hardly known anything had happened without the internet. So, and we had our own issues where I live at the beginning of August with flooding and things like that. So, but the only note, and I'm not here to comment necessarily on, you know, whether the storm is a result of natural forces, if it is human-made climate change, if it is the result of technology. That's not a conversation that I'm having right now, because this is an astrological note. But what I will say, and this in no way is meant to diminish the real experience of tragedy and loss that people are having, but I will say that this is a dress rehearsal, right? Now, the other caveat to this, I think it's really important that people understand, is that if we're using astrology to map the potentials and make decisions and be more aware of the energetic impact of these configurations, you can bet your bottom dollar that the people who have nefarious intention have been doing the same thing for eons, right? It's most likely why it has actually been branded as either, you know, unscientific and stupid from one angle or evil witchcraft from another angle, right? You're just talking about geometry and energy and frequency all working together, having an impact on us, who are energetic and frequency-based beings, just like everything else in the universe, right? And I'm not trying to, this is not my treatise on why astrology is functional and a temporal map. What I'm saying here is that, of course, you know, those who would want to control or have nefarious intent are absolutely using these potentials as much as we all are for our own personal growth and evolution, okay? This was a dress rehearsal. And as devastating as it's been, the flip side, the transmutational potential for that event is so significant in terms of how it will deepen our resolve and deepen our sense of guardianship and protection, right? In terms of our home, in terms of our family, in terms of the land, right? It is like, imagine, and you don't even have to imagine so much, because 15 degrees Pisces in terms of Sabian symbol language, this is exactly what it says. You know, this is an officer leading the troops into a simulated battle with live shells. It is a dress rehearsal, right? And it really materialized what for each of us is, well, it's spiritual, but I would say energetic, right? And that's not, again, that's not to diminish. That's not to say these places deserved for this to happen. I have seen some chatter on X in particular about, you know, what's been going, you know, what's happening in Asheville and all the underground, blah, 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 blah. Those are conversations for a different time. What I'm talking about is the astrological potential here, and the fact that this event, even if it was guided into place for nefarious intentions, the flip side of it, which is we always have the free will to do, is that it will strengthen our resolve, show us where our blind spots are, give us a sense of materialization of what otherwise has been energetic, right? There's always the opportunity to take a negative situation and transmute it into something positive and powerful and of the light. And you can even see that this is really coming into a grand water trine with Venus. And so for you Libra folks, we're going to really look at Venus during our astrological journey through the next 2 weeks, because Venus is your planetary ruler as a Libra sun, moon, or rising, especially sun and rising sign. And of course, if you're a moon in Libra, you're going to be also very connected to the planet Venus. She is the planetary ruler of the sign of Libra, and she's in the Libra rising second house, which is one of her natural placements. It makes her very possessive in some cases, but it also can really stabilize us in terms, if you are a Libra person with Venus in the second house, it can really stabilize someone into a sense of value and meaning of what is, right? Because the second house is what is, right? The objective reality. And your first house is your subjective projection into the world. The first house is the seed, the second house is the soil. And for you Libra rising people, Venus, being your planetary ruler in the second house, is feeling very possessive, but also very grounded in some cases, right? She's also in Scorpio, which is at her detriment. And for those of you who are part of the Starseed Fellowship in the Catalyst Classroom, you know that this time period already came up 2 weeks ago in the reading. Right now, right? The Seven of Cups, that drowning in our own delusions about things. That's Venus in Scorpio, right? She wants to be in a place that's balanced and aesthetically pleasing and symmetrical and beautiful and grounded and secure and safe and comfortable. Those are all the Venus types of energies here, whether it's relationship, whether it's finances, whether it's, you know, anything physical, your body, your home and the aesthetics of your home. These are all kind of Venus qualities. And certainly in Libra, since we are talking to you Libra folk, if you are a Libra person, you might just be here for, you know, because you're learning about astrology, you just want to get some more insight in general about this new moon. Regardless, Venus in Libra is Lady Justice, right? She is able to feel the balance of the scales of relationship, not with her eyes, but with her senses. And when she's in Scorpio, she can be drowning in the intensity of her own, of the feels that are created in relationship. So it's making it very difficult for the Libra people. And I am going to be completely honest. As much this is a dress rehearsal, right? And so you might not have been impacted directly, but if you're a Libra person, I feel, and I've gotten my own guidance around this very recently, it's going to be difficult over the next 6 months, especially for people who are used to a certain lifestyle. They've gotten comfortable with a certain lifestyle. Now they have to, with Venus and Scorpio, that lifestyle is subject to the energy that is created in relationship, whether conscious or not. And it can be this is where people kind of sink into the swamp. They sink into their own delusions. They sink into intoxication and fantasy because they can't actually hold themselves up in the intensity of the feels, right? And that's what Scorpio is. It's a water sign. It's about the feels and the energy that are created in relationship. Venus is all about the symmetry of the relationship. The experience of what was created out of that relationship is a different story, and that's where she really struggles. And I think that Libra people, I think all people, but especially Libra people, because of the eclipse, because the south node, right, the tail of the dragon, there are aspects that need to be harvested, Libra, about who you are, where you've been, what has been a sense of balance for you in the past. You have serious adjustments that are going to need to be made in order to embrace where you're going, right? New relationships. Now, some of the bigger issues here for Libra in that regard are the fact that Chiron, you know, the wounded healer, is in Aries as well. And for the Libra rising, that's in your 7th house. So there is a lot going on there. And some people might already have Chiron in Aries in their natal chart. So they're going through a Chiron return. The US natal chart is going through a Chiron return. So, and Chiron is the wounded healer, right? It is the wounds and the trauma that we continue to keep open and identify with. That we identify with in order to, be of service, right? It's the person that continues to identify with their victimhood so that they can continue to help or think that they're helping other people, right? And in the end, Chiron had to give up the very thing that made him an incredible healer and a teacher, which was his immortality, right? It was when he gave up his immortality so that he could actually end his own suffering, was when Chiron was able to really fulfill, I think, his destiny, right? His hybridization, and this is on many levels, I'll tell you, his hybridization in the end did not save him. It was giving that up. It was giving up that immortality. Yes, it gave him notoriety. Yes, he helped untold amount of individuals and beings with his healing and his divination and all the things that he gained as a result of being a hybrid. And he didn't ask for that, right? Chiron was born of a situation that he did not have any say in and created him. However, it was in giving up. And there is a certain amount of surrender and sacrifice. It's a very Virgo type of theme. And we're going to get there, right? We're going to get there eventually when the nodes shift into Pisces and Virgo. These are all themes we're going to be dealing with in general. So Libra, it's if you have been accustomed to a certain type of relationship, the form of relationship, if you've been accustomed to adjusting yourself in order to establish that relationship, I'm telling you right now, it is going to be a very difficult time for you, because it's going to be difficult for all of us, right? I mean, you can see the writing on the wall, and it's going to last throughout the next 6 months, because of this eclipse cycle and everything that has happened in such a short amount of time since the full moon lunar eclipse leading up to now, right? Now, what other amazing things are going to happen in the next 2 weeks? Well, it's actually quite a bit. So again, Hurricane Helene, I just want to impress upon people in general. And certainly, if you look at your chart, Libra rising people, you can see that Saturn is in your 6th house of self-sacrifice, service, your works and your labors, along with Neptune. It has not been easy for the Libra people. Mars in your 10th house of your public profile, your professional life, right? Your career, so to speak. I want you to understand that this event, the best way to make use of it is to dig into this 6th house, right? Dig into this 6th house. This is where the rubber meets the road in astrology, right? This is where you get your shit together in astrology. And I'll tell you, when Saturn does station direct in this area again for the Libra rising people and just Libra in general, you're going to see that you're going to have that stamina. You're going to have that sense of responsibility. You're going to have that, like, inner scaffolding to move forward in terms of your works, your labors, your purification, reconstituting yourself. And so maybe it wasn't the hurricane necessarily that impacted you. Maybe it's going to be something else, Libra. But again, this event, as awful as it is, and has challenging, it is providing incredible opportunity. And that opportunity is to shore up the areas that you need to within your own process, right? That's 6th house, right? Here's the other thing. Mars is soon going to station retrograde. Jupiter, during this next 2 weeks, is going to station retrograde in your 9th house, right? Belief systems are going to go through a huge overhaul with Jupiter going retrograde. What you believe, what you understood, what you thought the purpose and meaning of things really has been is about to go through a significant review process, Libra. Now, normally Jupiter really likes to be in the 9th house, and for Libra people, this has been great because Jupiter is at its detriment in Gemini and often will overexpand. So Libra, you might have experienced this at some point over the weeks and months of Jupiter being in Gemini, right? Overexpanding ideas, overexpanding overcompensating, right? Because Jupiter's weakest in Gemini, it wants to be in Sagittarius, but at least it's been in the ninth house. And so it's at least had in the areas of higher education, advanced training, a sense of purpose and meaning. At least it's been expanding, but it's been overcompensating, right? And confusing ideas with purpose and meaning. That's going to change when Jupiter stations retrograde, which is going to happen in the next 2 weeks leading up to the full moon in Aries. So let's start looking at the play-by-play. I feel like I've touched on all the things that I want to touch on, things that have come up in terms of my own guidance, things that have come up in the past readings of the last 2 weeks. Here we are. We're here now. There will be a change in fortune. And those who are part of the Starseed Fellowship and the Catalyst Classroom, you know that was the outcome of the reading, was that there will be a change in fortune, right? The wheel will turn. And we don't know where it's going to stop. But that has a lot to do, I think, again, with the Jupiter stationing retrograde. So let's start looking through the play-by-play here. First and foremost, I want to point out all of the stuff in Libra right now, because it's not just the new moon, but it's Black Moon Lilith, right? The lunar apogee, the place where the moon is furthest from our planet, right? And so it's the new moon, in fact, is going to be at as far away from the planet as it can be in its orbit. So I find that very interesting as well. Black Moon Lilith is that space within you that only can be filled by the divine flame. And it really challenges us in an astrological sense. It challenges us, and a soul level too, to not, again, overcompensate or try to disempower other people because we feel cut off or we feel frustrated because there's this void or emptiness, right? The moon comes into that place when it comes into that place. It's all about the timing. And truly, it's here with the new moon conjunct the lunar apogee. And so there's also this sense of looking ahead over the next 6 months, that which we each specialize in. And for you, Libra, it's going to be being a Libra, your ability to adjust. There's a confidence here that I think that we can all kind of wrap ourselves around, knowing that it's just going to take some time. And that was even with the full moon, lunar eclipse as well, that we know we need to show up. We know that we need to step out and practice in the presence of the Almighty, whatever that means to you, without exactly knowing how it's going to unfold, which direction we're going to all go in, knowing that we're probably all going to go in different directions and that we each do specialize in something. And this new moon eclipse it's important to realize that it's going to take time. It's not something that's just going to wrap up in the next 4 weeks, right? It's going to be something that stretches out into into March and April, right? When we come into the equinox in March, the vernal equinox. You also have Mercury here all wrapped up in this eclipse as well. And Mercury, even though Mercury does rule Gemini, and is about our individual consciousness, it's not exactly at its best in Libra, strangely enough. I mean, it's not bad because Libra is an air sign, but there's limitation with Libra, right? There's only so much you can do in order to achieve the adjustment to achieve the balance. There's only so much adjusting you can do in order to achieve that balance. And Mercury wants to be free, right? Free to consider ideas infinitely, right? I mean, that's the role of the magi or the magicians, if you want to think about it that way, like in terms of a tarot or archetypal representation. So the logos, right? Mercury in Libra is not exactly at its best, but when you do have Mercury in your first house like this, it does kind of bring these qualities of thoughtfulness and mental stimulation into the personality. You start to become much more heady and cerebral and thoughtful and logical and empirical with Mercury in your first house. And so these are all assets for the Libra people as we embark on we're closing the time capsule with this new moon, burying it in the ground and knowing that we're going to dig it back out in 6 months from now. So what is 11 degrees Libra? Well, it's a professor that's kind of peering over his glasses at his students, right? Now, there is this self-confidence that you can you can play your role, whatever it is that you've specialized in, that you've spent all this time studying and accumulating knowledge and information and getting ready to actually communicate it, to instruct those who are ready to receive it, right? We all have a role that we can play. And Libra, it truly is just being a Libra in a lot of ways, right? Being fair and balanced and making the adjustments and being mentally balanced as well. We can continue this role, right? And that we've elected to play, right? And we kind of refine ourselves through the process, right? And ultimately everything else is kind of subordinated in the moment, and all other considerations are subordinated to what is your immediate responsibility, okay? Which is really difficult to wrap our heads around, knowing that this is something that's going to be much more prevalent 6 months from now. But there is this quiet mastery, right, of events through your developed insight or your depth of understanding. So Libra, it's not that there's a mastery here, again, with the south node of the moon being the tail of the dragon, the karmic mastery at a soul level. And it's something that you can really set that intention with at a long-term level. You have the sense of that space within you with Black Moon Lilith that is also being filled by the Holy Spirit, by the divine flame, however you want to identify it. And then you have Mercury here too, which is very much willing to do the actual work, extracting the information, you know, not getting asphyxiated by it, but also knowing that you have to go down and get it. And that's something that Libra people are willing to do, right? They're willing to make, you are willing to make the adjustments. So now there's a negative side to all of these symbols, all of these degrees, right? The astrology is like a mandala, and every degree has an image associated with it, and you can start to use that to create that mandala, to look at it as a cymatic type of sacred geometry. So there's also a negative way that we can choose to interact with this energy. And so some people are going to have joy in depreciating others and compelling their subservience. It's not like that's a stretch, right? I mean, we all experience that on a daily level anyway, right? And so there are those who are going to put their intention into that with this eclipse. And there's nothing you can do about that. All you can do is put your energy into what you are seeding at a soul level moving forward, right? You may not know exactly how it's going to come about, the new seed point of experience, and how that's going to grow and develop later. But at least now is the intention of like, wow, I've accumulated so much. I've refined myself through this process of my specialization as a person, how I express myself, you know, how I feel, knowing that that's going to take us out into new relationships, that's going to propel us forward into new processes, new relationships. And ultimately, the North Node is going to be moving into Pisces, which for Libra rising is your 6th house. So it's also going to be new works and labors, new practices, new disciplines, right? Those are all 6th house types of energy. So there is so much that is happening in these 2 weeks. I'm going to try to blow through it as much as possible here. Not to gloss over anything. I want to make sure that I have, give things ample time, but there's so much that's happening, and you may want to consider a reading. So my store is back up on my website. And just in case you don't know, just to give you some context for what's been happening, my father passed away at the beginning of September, and he'd been ill for, certainly a number of years, but his illness really escalated at the end of June into July and August. So I've really had to step back in order to help care for him and be present for his transition, which has been, something that I've never really experienced before. If you've never been with someone who has been dying and cared for them and been with them at their last breath, it definitely changes you. So I've had to step back considerably, but my store is back up. So if you want to book a personal reading, if you want to book an energy work session, that is an option too, to really hone in on your chart and see how things are going to transpire for you. I'm not offering an eclipse reading necessarily, but if you want to customize something, you can always email me and we can figure something out in terms of what you can afford and what you're looking for, and we can customize a reading for you. So this is really just a general idea, and you can kind of mark your calendar of like, okay, this date, this date, and this date, there's likely to be something that kind of pops up that I can kind of get out ahead of and know what to expect, or like maybe be prepared to make certain decisions around these particular dates. And the first one I think is going to be later this week, and that's going to be when Venus comes into a trine with Saturn. So this grand water trine with Mars and Saturn and Venus is going to start becoming much more prevalent. So it's going to really be on, looks like Friday the 4th. And again, Venus in Scorpio is not exactly the greatest. She's not exactly at her, she's not very dignified here, let's put it that way. And anybody that has Venus in Scorpio right here, there's some very significant challenges when it comes to relationships and how you respond to what is created in those relationships. Now, the moon will also be in Scorpio as this is happening, so just to add a little bit more emotional intensity to this moment. However, a Venus trine Saturn is usually, it's really ideal for committing to long-term relationships. So we just had Mars in a trine to Saturn, which kind of just gives you that jump out the gate of just like that initiative, right, and determination to at least start something or to put something into action, something you desire, because that's what Mars really represents. And this for you, Libra, is in your 10th house of your career or your public professional profile here. Venus is in your 2nd house of what your actual resources are. And in a trine to Saturn, I mean, this is ideal for making commitments in a long-term relationship or making long-term investments. Considering for Libra rising that this is 2nd and 6th house, which are both traditionally earth-based houses, which are to do with resources and the functionality of them, this could very well, for Libra people, have a lot to do with investments of a resource nature. But it doesn't have to be. It can be relationship-wise as well. So there's a feeling of mutual respect in relationships. It's ideal for more formal social engagements or commitments. You may feel drawn towards a new relationship, and there's going to be more of this. Venus is very active in these 2 weeks, Libra. So just know that you, not only is this new moon in your sign and its eclipse, your planetary ruler, she's going to be very busy in these next 2 weeks. You may feel drawn towards new relationships, letting go of old ones that aren't resonant anymore. I mean, Libra rising people especially. You know that, come March and April, when the sun is in your 7th house and in Aries, it's going to be time to really start addressing and focusing on and identifying with those relationships. But you can't do that until you let go of old ones that aren't resonant anymore. So this is a great time to kind of make commitments to what you do have, and what you do want to invest in, and what your resources are and how you want to use them. So there's a time of clarity here. And again, based on what's just happened with the hurricane, even if it didn't affect you, you can use that as something to just, as symbolic in some ways of like, okay, this thing happened, and it's having this really profound impact on my life. And it's really kind of forcing the issue in terms of how you are getting your shit together. Again, that is the 6th house in a nutshell, right? Where you get your shit together. Because it's one thing to be passionate and expressive about things. That's your 5th house. Joyful and excited and taking risks and all that stuff. It's another when you have to do the day in, day out minutia. Right? You have to put one foot in front of the other. You have to get up and meditate every day, even if you don't want to. You have to get on the treadmill, even if you're feeling tired, right? That's the 6th house. It's commitment to yourself, which is also a kind of self-sacrifice, depending on how you look at it, right? For something greater. It's a gestation period, right? It's the plant in Virgo season, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's the ripening, right? It's not about the individual plant. It's about the ripening of the fruit that holds the seed, okay? So this this is going to have a lot to do with what your resources are, how you are identified with it. The moon in Scorpio is going to make it even that much more intense emotionally. But I think ultimately that's a good thing, especially when the moon and Venus come into a conjunction right after this. And you just get a very strong sense, personal, strong sense of what your resources are, how you value them, are they valuable to you, and specifically about the energy born out of relationship. That's the thing, Libra, you come to know who you are in relationship. And so the energy born out of those relationships are your resources. And so I think this trine is going to be really important for coming to realize what they are and how you can use them, how they can function at their best, right? And so maybe you do make commitments. Maybe you do realize, like, okay, there are things that need to be let go. There is this sense of, continual self-discovery as you're kind of discovering new aspects of who you are with this trine, right? You can't let go. You have to let go of what has been in order to do that. And there is this kind of sense of like, this is where I want to go, right? And maybe making commitments to that in particular. So the moon moves through Scorpio on the 4th and the 5th. Oh boy, the 6th is going to be coming into next week is going to be pretty intense. I'm not going to lie. Now, a little bit of a sidebar, but not really. Since we are talking about astrology, we can't not talk about astronomy. So there was a massive X-class flare released yet last night. X7. It's the strongest of this solar cycle so far. Many of you might have felt it. And it produced a CME, right? Coronal mass ejection heading right to Earth. So expect by this time that we're going to get the remnants, we're going to get the CME. Now, what that looks like, how that affects all of us is going to be different. Just know that solar weather, when it's amplified and geomagnetic unrest, has a significant impact on mental health, psychiatric health, cardiovascular health, inflammation, I'm telling hormonal imbalance, you name it. And of course, all the electronics as well. For those of you who are kind of, waiting on the EBS, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. But if you are and you're waiting on that, you're curious about that, you're wondering, this might not be, I could see how these two things might correspond, maybe, right? Because there's a lot of chatter that's definitively going to happen in October. So just keep in mind that solar-related shutdowns will shut down everything electronic. It's not just like you can't just pick and choose what you want, right? It's going to shut down everything. So that's just something to keep in mind as well, that, things might be blamed on a solar flare and a coronal mass ejection, but you still have access to certain things. So we'll see what happens. But I just wanted to put that in there. Come Saturday, Sunday into Monday, we're slated to get that CME. And that's something that we should be at least aware of and taking steps to mitigate, right? Make sure your pH is more alkaline. Make sure that you're detoxing. And that's been a message for months now of like, there's a huge purge happening and a detox that needs to be happening. So, up all of your things, whatever works for you to minimize inflammation, detox, right? Take care of yourself, being hydrated, electrolytes, all of the things that and I've done so much content on how to mitigate the effects of not only solar, amplified solar unrest, but also the man-made technological, radio frequency, the electromagnetic or the ELF stuff, right? I mean, it's all the same thing. The more that you take care of your body and your immune system is functioning, and the more that you bolster your own field, the better off you're going to be. So that goes with minerals, that goes with certain natural substances, right? Your pH being alkaline. You can use sound healing, tuning forks. Certain minerals and crystals will help to mitigate these effects, right? And so there are people that talk about how there's nothing you can do as a targeted individual, right? We're all targeted individuals now, and that's not to minimize people who've really had a lot of experience with this, but the reality is we're all here now, and we all have to take the steps. Anyway, sidebar over, back to the astrology. that Saturday into Sunday into Monday, we're going to have very amplified geomagnetic unrest, and that comes with all kinds of stuff, including seismic activity. So that's something to be aware of as well. So, whew, boy. The 6th, we're going to have Mercury in a square to Mars. So again, Libra energy in a square with Mars. So this is what people's tempers kind of get short, rushed thinking, jumping to conclusions when Mercury's in a square to Mars, arguments, disagreements, hostilities. Please just listen carefully and think twice before speaking if that's something, especially Libra people with Mercury in your first house. I feel like that there is a real need to be as practical and pragmatic as a person, even if it means facing the consequences of a situation, because Mars in Cancer is very protective and is rushing in and not thinking, is just doing in terms of protection. And it'll be very, especially when there is a practical concern with, taking care of yourself, everyday nourishment that is necessary to sustain yourself, right? And I'm not suggesting, see, these squares, you don't resolve them. You just lean into the discomfort and you come out the other side going, oh, I'm a better person, or I've learned something, or I see where my blind spots are now. Just know that coming into, what day is this? Sunday. This square, Mercury and Mars square, right? You as a person might have that kind of pragmatic projection, right? And Mars in your 10th house, which is just like steamrolling in terms of your professional persona, is going to be very focused on like, I got to get what I need. I need to take care of things. And you just may feel that square within yourself. But you may also, again, you don't want to rush to conclusions, jumping to conclusions, right? You don't want to necessarily say something that you can't take back, or do something that is very rushed, right? And that's a Mercury square Mars, just and lots of arguments, disagreements, hostility. It may be something that you experience internally, but I suspect it'll be a lot of arguing that people are going to be having. And at the same time, the Sun, also in Libra, is going to have a quincunx, right? An inconjunct with Saturn. Now you can see that Saturn has moved into the next degree in its retrograde at this point. And this type of transit really restricts your freedom. And Libra, since the Sun is in your sign, this is going to be very difficult. I'm going to break, there's a lot of things about a Sun in conjunct Saturn, but if you want to break it down to one sentence, it creates an imbalance between what you want to do and what you must do. And this is really going to feed into this Mercury square Mars energy as well. What you need to do, and what you want to do. And I would say it's just going to be, there's going to be a lot of imbalance in that energy, and you have to be very flexible, very adaptable, very open-minded as you adjust to either greater responsibilities or fewer responsibilities or barriers to progress. Hard work, patience, self-restraint, self-discipline, that is all not only Saturn, but that is 6th house energy, okay? Self-restraint, self-discipline. You may, and there's so many things that could be happening here in terms of how this is expressed. But for you, Libra rising people in particular, this has everything to do with who you are as a person, your personality, and the Sun being highlighting that, and the 6th house of self-discipline, self-restraint, patience, practice, your works and labors, putting one foot in front of the other, what you must do. So that's going to be difficult, right? So you may have to take care of someone. You might have previous mistakes or misdeeds may catch up with you. There may be disappointment because you're lacking results or recognition. And there may be an imbalance between your goals and the expectations of others. I would say for Libra rising, this has much more to do with your goals and who you are, right? There's going to be a change or an imbalance there. And you may feel constantly torn between competing responsibilities, right? And but there's, you can't, Well, you should not. It would be ill-advisable for you to neglect your responsibilities in this situation. If you ignore the essentials, and Mars in Cancer in your 10th house will definitely keep you focused here, right? The essential matters, right? Taking care of and procuring what it is you actually need. If you ignore these things, it will catch up with you. So pay your debts. Don't take any more debt than you need at this time, right? Don't take on more responsibility than you need to. That's the other thing. This Mercury square Mars is going to bring this up, right? And in a public way, Mars is just enterprising in a very public, professional way. Is just like, I need to procure these things. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but sometimes Mars acts without thinking. And this is where the Mercury aspect of who you are, Libra, is like, you know, it's important to take care of our needs, but you also don't want to take on more than you can actually handle. And the sun in a quincunx or an inconjunct to Saturn is also going to bring this out. Now, when we get to the 8th, very interesting things are going to break loose here. Venus is going to... There's going to be, you can see here, this mystic rectangle. Now, in astrology, the mystic rectangle, as you can see, are two opposing forces, and they are boxed in by the rectangle. So there's tension in two different directions, yet there is opportunity to... It surrounds that tension. It doesn't resolve it, but it gives you other avenues in which to mitigate the effects. It also can be a way to be lazy about it and not deal directly with the opposition. So it just depends on how you approach this mystic rectangle. With the moon in Sagittarius, opposite Jupiter, right? And so for you, that's your 3rd house of what's right in front of you, right? Your environment, your thoughts, your ideas, your daily communication with people. And you pick up on patterns emotionally and intuitively in the when the moon is in the 3rd house that you often can't pick up just solely in your conscious mind. And I do feel like that it will be important to realize that sometimes you kind of have to insulate yourself amongst those who speak your language in order to protect yourself from the environment around you that may not be resonant with you, right? And there's something that can be provided. There's something that's service to humanity. I just feel like with this mystic rectangle, Libra, especially because it has a lot to do with Mercury and Chiron as well in your 1st and 7th, that you just, it's okay to provide for people. It's okay to give those those in need, right? It's also really important that you are not completely absorbed into that environment, and that you know where you belong and who you belong with, and find those connections. And the moon in Sag in the 3rd house is going to really highlight that in this mystic rectangle, okay? So the other things that's happening, as you can see, is that Venus will be in a trine to Mars. This is where your desire for social contact and enjoyment and stimulated creativity is very enhanced, right? You're willing to take risks to move forward, and you can inspire other people at the same time. And of course, Venus and Mars, like the divine feminine and masculine, coming into a trine. Especially Venus is in Scorpio. Mars is the co-ruler of Scorpio as well. So that's going to give, while Venus might be drowning, Mars is like, hey, here's a direction that you can project into, taking some of this creativity and stimulated creativity and increased desire for enjoyment and social contact and value. Give it somewhere to go, and you can get active. You can inspire other people in what you feel passionate about. I think this is a really good moment here. And also Mercury is in a trine to Jupiter as part of this mystic rectangle, right? Optimism, good news. It's one of the best transits for making plans. So there's a lot of opportunity in here amidst all of the other challenges to really be able to visualize where it's all going, and to make plans, and to be optimistic and taking risks to move forward. Just keep in mind that right after this happens on the 9th, which is next Wednesday, Jupiter is going to station retrograde. And for the Libra rising people, like I said, this is going to be that the purpose and meaning of relationship, which is what the ninth house really represents. We develop our understanding, beliefs are developed in the ninth house. A synthesis, right? An alchemy is part of the ninth house, which is what, wisdom and higher education, advanced training. Those are all foreign travel, right? Those are all things in the ninth house. And Jupiter being there is the natural ninth house ruler. But the fact that it's going to be retrograde, I'm telling you, Libra, there's going to be some measure of reconsidering these social values and purpose. And there's nothing wrong with that. And just know that the plans that you make and the optimism and good news around your solicitude, it may not be something until 6 months from now that's really going to start coming forward into a brand new type of relationship or contract or commitment, right? Which is what the seventh house ultimately represents. Now, the 10th is the first quarter moon. It will be in Capricorn, which for you is the fourth house. And so, just keep in mind that things get very deeply sensitive with the moon in a fourth house. And again, the sun in your sign and the moon in its detriment in Capricorn, right? It's at its weakest in at least it's in the fourth house, right? The moon in the fourth house at least is much more natural, but in Capricorn. See, Libra people have to contend with opposition at every stage, right? Everything is reversed for the Libra rising person. So yes, the moon in Capricorn is at its weakest because you have to emotionally consider not just your own feelings, you have to consider the good of everything. And moon ruled people you're not dealing with things at the social or institutional level of Capricorn. The moon is at home in Cancer. This is about our own personal feelings and our own deep intuition. So, there's a sense of, I think with this first quarter moon, especially because it's a crisis of action, what do I do, right? Do I, tap into the political power of where I feel like I belong? Or, with the sun in your sign, that you have to make adjustments and you have to face the consequences of those scales tipping, right? It's going to be a difficult moment. But along with that, there is this yod, right? Or finger of God with Jupiter, Chiron, and Venus. Again, here we go with Venus again. So you may experience some sort of, relationship or financial stress. But the yod really, especially in this place in Scorpio, I feel like is going to, it's pointing to a means of relief from tension, right? It's a socially accepted way to get out maybe some aggression or some, instinctual aggression, if that makes sense, right? And it has to do with your resources. So maybe there's a need to exercise a little moderation and humility. You may receive a gift here in terms of resources, and the potential is to overindulge here or to take unnecessary risks with that gift, for instance. Other people are going to have financial stress. And Libra people, I do feel like that, again, this goes back to what I said at the very beginning. Some people are going to have financial hardship because they are accustomed to a lifestyle and a certain type of income and assets and resources. And as things socially and relationally have changed and the energy has changed, which is Scorpio, Libra people are really going to feel the impact of that. And so you may need to just be more tactful. You may need more moderation. You may just need to find an outlet. And I do feel like that this yod, right, or this finger of God, right, which is two inconjuncts that are connected by a sextile, and that's Jupiter and Chiron are in a sextile in your 7th and 9th house. We know that things are changing in this area. And so, there will be something that's a provision there, I feel like. in order to release some tension, but you don't want to go too far in one direction because that's going to go bad too. And I don't think that's anybody here, but again, you definitely don't want to go off the deep end necessarily if you are experiencing some sort of hardship, and people will, right? And that's the thing, depending on where your resources have come from and how reliant you are, and if you can't make those adjustments. Whew, Libra people, I don't think are really going to have that hard of a time. That's kind of the nature of who you are, is your ability to make adjustments in relationships or the social contract or whatever. Now, the 11th, this day I've been talking about for a long time. The 11th is when Pluto stations at the last degree of Capricorn, and the moon will be conjunct Pluto when it stations direct. So I anticipate that this time period is actually going to be much more impactful in terms of how we do business, the nature of the markets, right? Because Pluto rules Scorpio, right? And Scorpio is how we do business. Ultimately, it is the nature of what is created when we bring our resources together, right? There's a magic there, whether it is good or not. That's what Scorpio represents, is the realm of energy that is generated when we come together. And the thing that, that's why Scorpio has this component of sexuality and sexual energy to it, because that's what's created when you come together, is life. Now, and part of that is when you come into life, then you also are accepting that the cycle will fulfill itself. And that's kind of the birth, the death, the regeneration, the cycle, right? The 11th is going to be, and is going to be intense. And of course, for Libra people, this is home and family. This is country of origin. This is your tribal identity, your clan, right? Fourth house, where you feel like you belong, where you feel safe, where you're rooted, where your root system is, where your core of who you are is. And things are going to start really changing in this place, and it may shake you, right? It may shake your foundation, but just know that with the shaking of foundation, that there's the opportunity to set down new root systems. Whew, boy, I'm getting a big hit on that. I don't know what that's going to look like. I just think it's going to be really, really intense. Now, what's going to happen a couple days after this, Libra, is Mercury in your sign is finishing out here. It's going to square Pluto. So this also brings very deep thinking and intense interactions. And there's a sense, I think, that you will realize, like, oh, I kind of like, I know the whole picture within myself. And the square to Pluto is going to be like, okay, this is challenging my thinking, because it's one thing to have this kind of holistic view of what is and what is social balance, and then the experience emotionally of the demolition machine turning back on in the place where your root system is. Oh man, it's going to be intense. But there's incredible potential here to uncover secrets and mysteries, to deepen your understanding. And yes, it will challenge your thinking, and it can lead to a crisis, and you could experience the dark side of humanity. That is absolutely a potential with Mercury square Pluto like this. But again, the potential here for really deepening your understanding of yourself is substantial, especially as Mercury then moves into Scorpio. Now, the upside of this is the sun is in a trine. The sun in Libra, especially if you're a Libra sun, is going to be in a trine to Jupiter. Yes, it's going to come into opposition with Chiron, and that's going to bring up all those issues about relationship and who you are in relationship, and the nature of those relationships. But this trine to Jupiter, yes, Jupiter is retrograde at this point, but it brings growth and prosperity and good fortune, opportunities for success. I would just keep in mind that the retrograde of Jupiter, it's going to come back to this point. So whatever that increased goodwill and tolerance and harmonious relationships, you're more confident and you have a more adventurous outlook. This is a great time to begin new projects, knowing that they will take time and that it'll be something out towards the 6-month mark, right? You can increase your wealth through investments. I feel like that this could be new social investments and business deals, or just personal growth, right? That can happen as well. And from, like I said, there's so much happening. The sun comes into a square with Mars. In fact, you can see that there is a T square here with the sun, Chiron, and Mars. And as much as this will be such a test of character, and especially from competitors or enemies or authority figures, people are really going to be wanting to assert their power, and there's going to be a lot of ego conflicts when a sun is in a square to Mars. And again, for Libra people, this is going to have a lot to, I feel like that good nature and balanced approach of a sun or a Libra identified person is really going to be challenged in the professional and public realm, and you're going to want to be coming out shooting, right? Because people are going to challenge you, and you may already be irritable and impatient and respond to provocation. But reckless and impulsive behavior is going to bring danger. So be very mindful of the intensity coming into next week around these things. Take a defensive position. You don't want to initiate a conflict or assert your ego or go on the offensive, but you definitely want to take a defensive position. Because there's so much destructive energy with a sun square Mars like this, especially with Mars in Cancer, which is, very protective of that which we feel like belongs to us and we belong to. And it'd be very public. So you don't necessarily want to be putting yourself out there like that in a public way, because I think it could really damage your reputation, possibly. Now, Venus, your planetary ruler, is going to, again, be very active. It's going to be opposite Uranus and trine Neptune. And I think this is going to be the balance point in terms of all of that intense energy, which is like, you're going to feel this kind of like, oh, suddenly you're going to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. Or I want a change. You're suddenly going to be like, I want to change in relationship, or it's going to signal a change in relationship, especially resources, second and eighth house. Financial windfalls could be possible again, but you don't want to take the risk if you do come into extra money. So ultimately, this could have you interested in pursuing a new direction. And it could be very sudden. But again, Uranus is retrograde, and it is conjunct Algol, the head of the Gorgon. So yeah, there may be things that you have to suddenly adjust to in terms of how you do business and the energy that is born out of relationship. But it's really going to, I think, kind of change your perspective on the relationships you want to be in, the resources and how you use them. It may break up some stale routines. And then you have the trine to Neptune, which is going to just heighten your sense of compassion, your wish to serve others, your fantasy, your daydreaming, your creativity. I think that trine is going to be very useful in terms of, really allowing yourself to imagine and dream up new ways of doing things, new works and labors, right? I think that's going to be very beneficial. And then, of course, the 17th is when we're going to have our full moon in Aries, which I would encourage you, Libra, to also watch when I do put it out, because, again, you can't get away from your opposition, especially as a Libra person. You can't get away from your opposition because it is part and parcel of who you are as a person. Without that opposing force, you don't have anything in order to balance against. And that's a big part of who you are. So I encourage you to listen to the full moon in Aries when it comes, which is going to be on the 17th of October, which I believe is going to be a Thursday. So, my friends, I'm going to leave it there for this report and forecast, our new moon annular solar eclipse in the sign of Libra, for the Libra rising sun moon folks, and certainly anybody who's interested in learning astrology or just want to pick up tidbits of guidance and wisdom from the cosmic clock as we move forward. So if you have any questions, certainly comments, sharing, liking, subscribing, all of those things help the channel, as you already know. And if you're interested in a reading or energy work, my store is back up. If you want the eclipse forecast, the 6-month forecast, you can go to my website and either download the digital format for a small price, or you can consider subscription through Subscribestar. First 30 days are free. Catalyst Classroom, not so much, but that also includes everything, plus you get a free service every month, either energy work, a mini reading, or a one-on-one consult as part of that tier 3 subscription. So Take care, everyone. Enjoy the eclipse as much as you can. Libra, just know that, you know, you have to make adjustments and let some things go in order for new relationships to have the potential to come up in your life. And it may come in a way that is very difficult for you, and it might not seem like you can adjust to it at all, right? And that's okay, because maybe it's just a matter of just letting it go and knowing that new potential is on its way. So take care, everyone. I'll talk to you next time. Ciao for now.